Ethan Hayes moved like a man with no time. The freighter Resolute shook under him. Sparks fell like rain. Lights flickered and then died. Men shouted. The ship smelled of hot metal and smoke. Ethan's boots hit the corridor hard. He heard the alarm scream in his ear and felt the heat of the blast behind him. He saw the shape under the beam before he understood it. The thing was small and curled up like a child. Its skin was pale blue and thin. Its eyes were too large and wet. Its fingers were delicate and trembled. Ethan did not think. He dropped to his knees and pushed at the metal. The beam moved a little and then slipped. A sharp edge cut his side. Pain hit him like ice. He tasted iron. He did not let go. People ran all around him. A Marine screamed orders. A bolt of fire slid past the hatch. Ethan pulled the child free and wrapped his arm around her. She was light, lighter than a human child. Her breath came in small, fast bursts. Her name, if she had one, was a sound like a bell that no one could hear yet. "Move!" a voice barked. A Marine stood in the blur of smoke, with his rifle up. He looked frightened and angry at once. Ethan saw his face clear under the helmet. The man's eyes were hard. "Drop it," he said. "Orders." Ethan held the child close. Blood warmed his shirt where the metal had cut him. He kept his face toward the Marine and tried to look steady. "She's a child," he said. His voice was small in the roar. "She's hurt." The Marine's hand shook on the rifle. Behind the Marine, Ethan saw Captain Laura Reed. She was a solid woman with a face that had learned to give quick orders. Her eyes moved fast, taking the ship and the damage. For a moment she only watched. The ship groaned like an animal in pain. Then she stepped forward and pointed to a side door. "Med Bay," she said. "This way. Move." Ethan ran. He held the child with one arm and pressed his other hand to the wound. Shrapnel pushed into his ribs when he breathed. Fire flicked on the deck plates. The corridor smelled like a broken oven. He kept thinking of the child's eyes. They were bright and not afraid of him. That small face stayed in his mind and did not let him quit. They reached the med bay. The room was chaos, but quieter than the halls. Medics worked like slow, careful machines. The child was put on a table. A doctor with tired eyes checked the chest and the face. She wore gloves, but she did not hide the wonder in her look. She had never seen skin like this. The monitors clicked and hummed and gave no clear answer. Ethan sank against the wall. Blood spread warm on his shirt. He smiled once, a small broken smile, and felt it vanish. The doctor looked at him and said, "You took shrapnel." He nodded. The pain was a dark friend. He saw the child's fingers twitch. The doctor said a name he had not heard. "Lyra." The syllable felt soft in the air. Lyra opened her eyes a little, and they were full of a strange wet light. Machines picked up signs of life and then lost them again. The medics moved faster. Outside the medbay windows, crews fought smoke and fire. The ship's hull moaned under pressure. Ethan heard a radio call. "This is Reed. All hands, report. Secure survivors." Captain Reed's voice was steady, and that steadiness made someone else move. A Marine came in and checked the corridor. He looked at Ethan with the same hard eyes from before. "They say those things bring trouble," he said low, like a warning. Ethan thought of the Marine's words and the child's face. The two things did not fit. The child had a mark on her chest, a tiny raised pattern like a star. It did not glow, but it seemed to breathe. Ethan reached for a small cloth and covered the mark without thinking. He had no right, but the cloth felt like a small shield. A second explosion hit the hull. The med bay light stuttered. Dr. Carter, the lead medic, ordered calm voices and hands that did not shake. Machines flashed then steady numbers. Lyra's breath became steadier for a small time. The doctor looked at Ethan, and her face softened. "You saved her," she said. Ethan did not know if saving her was right or wrong. He only knew he had pulled a child from dying metal and paid with his blood. His side burned when he moved. He closed his eyes for a moment. The ship seemed to spin, slow and heavy. He tried to stand, and then felt the world bend. When he opened his eyes again, the light was not the medbay light. The room shone a cold green. Men in strange coats stood far from him. Their speech had pipes and clicks he did not understand. Lyra lay in a glass box on the far table. Tubes ran to her, and the mark on her chest looked like a tiny beating star. Ethan tried to call for Captain Reed, but no sound came. His hand found his side, and a bandage was there, clean and tight. He tasted metal, and the memory of the corridor and the scream of the ship. He thought of Marine's voice saying, "Orders." He thought of Lyra's eyes, which had looked at him like she had known him a long time. A shadow leaned near his face, and a voice that was not quite human said, "You are awake." Ethan blinked and felt fear and a strange calm at once. He had taken shrapnel to save the child. Now, he woke in a place he did not know. The promise he had made to protect her felt heavy and true inside his chest. He did not know who watched him. He did not know who would come for Lyra. He only knew that his body hurt and the world had changed. And somewhere, the sound of metal and flame still moved like a drum in his ears. Ethan woke to light that was cold and green. His mouth tasted of metal. His left side throbbed under bandage. He tried to sit up and the world tipped, slow and strange. Hands pressed him back gently. He saw faces behind clear shields. The faces looked human, but their eyes were tired and sharp. One woman, in a white coat, leaned close. She wrote on a slate, and then spoke with a voice that sounded like rain on glass. "He's awake," she said. "Name?" "Ethan Hayes," he managed. His voice was small. The woman nodded. She wore a badge that read Dr. Emily Carter. Her hands moved with calm. Behind her, a glass case held a small shape wrapped in a blanket. Tubes ran from the case to a bank of humming machines. Even from where Ethan lay, he could see pale blue skin and the round, wet eyes that had burned into his memory. "Is she alive?" Ethan asked. He held his breath as if the answer might break him. Dr. Carter did not answer at once. She watched the monitor and then looked back. "Yes," she said softly. "Stable for now. We have readings that make no sense." Ethan tried to touch the glass, but a nurse stopped him. "No," she said. "Not yet." He reached for his side. The bandage was clean and tight. He felt the small ridges where metal had rested under his ribs. The pain was a dull drum. He remembered the corridor, the beam, the scream of metal, the Marine's hard eyes. He remembered Lyra's small face and how her hand had seemed to trust him without a sound. A thin man in a dark jacket entered. He spoke into a radio and then turned to Dr. Carter. "Security team says the ship is gone," he said. "We lost the Resolute in transit. No whole ping, no beacon, nothing." Ethan felt the room tilt again. He had not left the ship. He had not thought to leave the ship. He had not told anyone where he went. "Where am I?" he asked, but his mouth dried. Dr. Carter's eyes moved to the glass case. "You are off the Resolute," she said. "This facility is not ours completely. It is a joint field lab. We received survivors and some unknown cargo. You and the child were moved here during triage." Ethan tried to picture triage. He tried to picture hands taking him away. Nothing fit. He pressed his fingers against a bandage and felt something warm. A thin line of rust red soaked the cloth. He closed his eyes. He saw smoke and Captain Reed's face and the Marine's rifle. He heard a voice whisper in the back of his mind, not in words but in feeling. "Stay. Protect." Lyra made a small sound in the glass. The sound was almost a note, high and soft. Dr. Carter checked the panel and frowned. "Her vitals spike when you move," she said, as if that were ordinary. "Is there a link? Did you touch her after she was pulled from the wreck?" Ethan thought of the small cloth he had used to cover the mark on her chest. He remembered the prick of pain when the metal cut him. He had not meant anything, only to hide her from the Marine's fury. Now the thought sat heavy. "I held her," he said. "I carried her to Med." The thin man in the jacket tapped at a device. "Records show you were recovered near the blast point," he said. A long transfer followed. "You were unconscious for 32 hours. He looked at Ethan with a question in his eyes. "Do you remember anything else?" Ethan shook his head. He did not want to think of the alarm voice that had told him to leave, of the beam, of the flash that had taken the hull. He only knew that someone had moved him far from the ship and put him where the light was green. Footsteps called in the corridor. A heavy boot paused at the door. Captain Laura Reed stepped inside, without knocking. She still wore part of her uniform. Her hair was loose and her jaw was hard. When she saw Ethan, she moved like a woman who had found something she thought lost. "You're alive," she said. Her voice had a tired edge that could cut. She looked at Dr. Carter, and then at the glass case. "Where is she?" "In a containment unit," Dr. Carter said. "Stable." Reed's eyes met Ethan's. For a second, a flash of anger moved over her face. "You walked into a battle, and you took a non-human life form?" she asked. "Do you know what that means? You put us all at risk." Ethan remembered the Marine's rifle and the beam of fire. He felt his promise tighten in his chest. She was a child, he said. She needed help. The captain's face did not soften. "We are not safe here," she said. "This lab is marked on old maps. We do not have time for mercy if it costs us the ship." A shrill alarm cut the talk. Lights in the hall flashed red and then returned to green. A recorded voice intoned, "Unknown signal detected. External network breach." Dr. Carter's hands flew over the console. Her voice shook for the first time. "The child's mark is active," she whispered. Numbers streamed across the screen and then stopped as if a breath had been held. "It is broadcasting." Ethan felt the world tighten like a fist. "Broadcasting what?" he asked. Dr. Carter did not answer with words. Instead, she turned and looked at Lyra, who had opened her eyes a little. The small mark on Lyra's chest showed a pulse of light, faint and steady. In that flash, Ethan felt a memory that was not his. Clean air over a purple field, voices in a place he had never seen. He did not know why his chest hurt more from that memory than from the wound. Outside, boots ran. Voices shouted in a language the guards did not fully understand. The thin man closed the lab door and set a bolt into place. Ethan sat up harder. He needed to move. He needed to find out who had taken the Resolute, whether Captain Reed's people were safe, and why Lyra's mark sang like a beacon. He pushed off the bed and felt the world tilt. But he kept going. As he stepped toward the door, a sound slipped into the air like a small bell. It was not from the machines. It came from inside Lyra. The mark glowed stronger, and with it a voice, not in words but in a pull, reached for Ethan's mind. He understood one thing then, clear and simple. Someone was coming, and they would not leave without the child. Lyra opened her eyes, and the room changed. Light bent at the edges. People who worked in the lab stopped. Machines made small noises like animals waking. Ethan felt the change first in his chest. A warm, strange feeling spread there. He did not know why, but he knew one word without hearing it. Promise. Lyra did not speak like a human. She made a thin sound, like a bell underwater. But when she looked at Ethan, he understood. Pictures moved in his head. A field of sharp grass under a purple sky. A small house built of bone and glass. Faces like birds and faces like stones. A ship burning slowly in the dark. Fear and a voice saying, "Run." Dr. Emily Carter stepped closer. Her hand shook a little on the tablet she held. "She is responding," she said. Her voice was both fear and wonder. "It looks like primitive telepathic contact, or a neural echo. I've never seen this level of cross-species response." Captain Laura Reed did not look proud. Her jaw was hard. She kept her eyes on Lyra and then on Ethan. "We did not bring an enemy to our door," she said. "We did not rescue a weapon." Her voice was low, but every person in the room heard it. "You call me a child," Ethan said. He could feel the promise, like a hot coin in his hand. "She looked at me like I owed her my life. I carried her. I can't hand her to people who will hurt her." Marcus Hayes, a Marine with a face that had learned to be angry, leaned on the door frame. He had lost friends in the blast. "Do you know what you could do?" he asked. "If that mark is a beacon, it could bring a fleet. It could bring our end. We are holding on by a thread." Dr. Carter pulled up a screen. Numbers and shapes moved fast. A close view showed the small raised mark on Lyra's chest. It glowed faint green and then faded. When Ethan moved closer, the mark pulsed like a small heart. The machines hummed and one graph jumped. "There is a chemical link," Dr. Carter said. When his blood touched her, Some reaction started. Her vitals change when he is near. Ethan remembered the hot cut in the corridor, the cloth he had pressed over Lyra's mark. He had tried to keep her safe without thought. Now that thought had weight. He felt the truth hard and simple. His blood had touched her. They were tied in a small way. Lyra pushed more images into Ethan's head. He saw a city with towers like bones. He felt wind that smelled of salt and iron. He felt hands that were kind and hands that were cruel. He felt a ring of ships falling from the sky, taking everything. He saw names and a tongue he did not know and learned their meaning at once. Hunters. Anthrax. The name cut like ice. Captain Reed's face went very still. Anthrax, she said. We have reports. They hunt for those marks. They take any who carry them back to be judged. No trial. No mercy. A silence spread. Machines beeped. The lab felt small and very loud. Dr. Carter moved a glass case and gently touched it. Lyra blinked and looked at her. The child's breath came faster. She is not just one life, Dr. Carter whispered. That mark could be a call. Or a key. It may link to others out there. We do not know if it will save her people or doom them. Reed's hand tightened on the railing. We can't risk Earth for one alien, she said. If we turn her over, we may keep our people safe. Ethan stepped between Reed and the glass. He felt blood warm under his shirt when he moved. The pain was a reminder. If we hand her over, what if they kill her? He asked. What if they kill her people too? I saw the fear in her eyes. I promised her. His voice was a thin thing, but it did not break. Marcus spat. You promised a stranger your life. How many more will die for that promise? Ethan did not answer. He looked at Lyra. She met his eyes and placed a small hand on the glass like someone touching a map. The mark on her chest glowed very bright for a moment. In that flash, Ethan saw stars and lines. A map. It was not for him to read fully, but he felt its pull. A path through dark space, a place where help might hide and where danger slept. The lab's alarms were soft at first. Then they became sharp. A technician shouted. External signatures incoming. Long-range array picks up multiple craft on intercept course. Everyone moved at once. Boots beat across metal. Reed barked orders. Dr. Carter swore. Marcus grabbed his weapon and looked at Ethan like a man looking at a traitor and a hero both. Who are they? Ethan asked. His voice shook. No good, Marcus said. Not our kind. Not ours. Dr. Carter's screen showed shapes far away, dots moving like slow fish. The dots bloomed into lines. A voice over the intercom said, Unknown fleet converging. Bearing 092. Lyra pressed her face toward the glass and made a sound that hurt and healed at once. The sound crawled into Ethan's head like a thirsty thing. For a beat, he saw her world again. Homes burned, children crying, a ship lifting like a hand. He understood then that saving her was not just a small mercy. It was an action with weight in the whole dark of space. Captain Reed looked from the screen to Ethan and then toward the airlock. Her choice would shape many lives. She swallowed. Hold position, she said at last. Prepare for contact. Do not engage unless fired upon. Protect the child. Ethan took a breath and put his hand on the glass where Lyra's small palm pressed. He felt a cool press to the barrier and the promise inside him brightened like a small flame. He had saved her once. He would stand and save her again if he must. He did not know what the hunters would bring. He did not know if Earth would pay for his mercy. He only knew the promise and the weight of it. Outside the lab, a distant light grew. Through the window panels, the shape of many ships slid into view. Their lights were cold and white. The sky filled not with stars, but with coming metal. The lab siren rose, and the word anthrax moved in the air like a storm wind. The sky outside the lab was full of light and metal. Ships moved like teeth. The facility shook with each pass. Inside, people ran in a tight panic. Captain Laura Reed stood at the center like a rock. Her voice cut the noise. Hold your stations. Seal the hangars. Protect containment. Marines move fast. Marcus Hayes was first at the door. His face was hard and wet with sweat. He checked the locks and barked orders. Ethan felt like the floor under him was a drum. He wanted to run, and he wanted to stay. He wanted to hold Lyra and never let go. The first blast hit a lower ring. The wall bent like paper. A fireball ate the hallway, and men were thrown to the floor. The alarm screamed. Reed shoved Ethan toward a bulkhead. "Get down!" she shouted. He dropped, bandage tight, heart thudding like a trapped bird. Outside, the hunter fighters screamed across the sky. Their shapes were wrong, not smooth like human ships. They had spikes and plates and lights that burned cold. The comms put a name to the sound. Anthrax. The name tasted like iron on Ethan's tongue now. A team of Marines moved toward containment. Dr. Emily Carter stayed with the monitors, her hands flying over the keys. Lyra lay quiet in the glass case, machines hooked to her small body. Her mark glowed faint. Every shout, every step made the mark pulse like a small moon. Keep her protected. Emily ordered. If they reach her... They did not need the end of her sentence. A loud crash shook the lab. The inner door splintered. A shadow moved inside that did not belong to the people of Earth. The hunter who stepped through was tall and lean. Its face was a helmet of bone and metal. Tubes ran along its arms and skin. It smelled wrong, like oil and rain on hot iron. Contact. Marcus howled and fired. Rounds hit the hunter's armor and slid like rain off glass. The hunter moved like it never felt pain. Behind it came others, smaller and quick. They worked together like a single living tool. The Marines fired until their weapons clicked dry. Ethan grabbed a rifle and ran. His breath burned and his side pulled like a rope. He did not think of his own pain. He thought of Lyra's small hand and the promise that lived in his chest. One hunter threw a blade that cut through a bulkhead panel. A flash of blue light swept the room, and the light stuttered. Machines hiccuped. Dr. Carter cursed. "They have EMP arrays," she said. "They know how to fight tech." The hunters moved like shadows. They knew the lab like it was theirs. They used the broken air to crawl behind a stack of cases. One hunter reached a glass case and crouched like a hunter before a trap. It looked at Lyra as if it had found a jewel. Then it touched the glass, and words in a voice not human came out. A low, dry sound that made the hair on Ethan's arm stand up. "Give," it said, not the way a man asks, but the way an animal claims a bone. Marcus charged. He slammed into the hunter, and they went down in a tangle of arms and steel. Ethan slid under a bench and saw things too fast. The hunter's hand moved like a blade, and Marcus's face changed from anger to a sharp pain. He hit the floor hard. Someone shouted Marcus's name, and Ethan felt a hot fear like a live wire. The hunter stood, and the lab went quiet for one long breath. Then Lyra made a sound, a small, raw note that climbed like steam. The mark on her chest flared a bright green that cut through the dim. The glass of the case trembled as if it wanted to become a door. The hunter put its hand to the mark through the glass. It did not look at Marcus any longer. It looked like someone who finds what they need. Ethan lunged forward. He grabbed the hunter's wrist. Heat and a smell like metal filled his nose. He hit with a pipe. Metal rang. The hunter did not even blink. Then something broke the air. A sound like an animal's cry and a metal tear together. Lyra screamed. The scream was small and huge at once. It jumped from the glass and hit the hunters like a wave. Their armor shivered. Joints stalled. One hunter staggered and hissed as if someone had struck it. Thin sparks ran along its plates. The glass case cracked. The hunter who held Lyra recoiled. It cussed in its own language and reached with both hands. For a second its eyes, if they were eyes, looked human and angry. It grabbed Lyra through the broken glass. Lyra's small body arched toward Ethan like a string pulled tight. Her fingers brushed his for the barest breath. "Ethan!" someone screamed. He swung again and hit the hunter's arm. The hunter did not drop her. It turned and ran toward the breach. The hunters moved with the speed of wind. They carried Lyra like a prize that must not fall. Ethan ran after them. Men fell and metal bent, and the lab smelled of smoke and blood. A Marine shoved a flare into Ethan's hand. He fired it and light exploded. The hunters' shapes blurred in the flare, and then they were gone, sliding through a blown hole and into the dark outside. Captain Reed slammed a fist on a console. "Seal the doors. Pursue if we can." Her voice broke, and it made everyone run like a bell had tolled. Dr. Carter lifted Lyra's case and found only cracks and a small smear where a tiny hand had been. The machines that had hummed were dead or dying. The mark's glow left a path in the dust on the case like a last step. Ethan stood at the opening and watched the sky. The hunters' ships were already back where they came from. Quick streaks into the dark. His breath came in short, hot pulls. He felt the pipe heavy in his hand and the bandage tight on his side. Marcus crawled to his feet, blood on his sleeve. He spit and did not look at Ethan. "You did this," he said, low and sharp. "You pulled them here." Ethan did not argue. He only thought of the small hand and the look in Lyra's eyes when she touched his. He thought of the promise that had lit his chest like a small fire. He had saved one life, and the cost had come fast. From outside came a new sound, not a ship, but a long, low carrier call. The lab's long-range sensors lit up with readout like a heartbeat. Dr. Carter looked at the screen and then at Ethan, as if she wanted to be kinder and could not find the words. "Their signal," she said. "It answered something. A return ping. It is bigger than we thought." Ethan's mouth went dry. He looked toward the sky where the hunters had vanished. He did not know what the return would bring. He only knew Lyra had been taken, and that the promise he made was not yet done. The hunters had her now, but something else had answered her call. The world felt larger and darker than before. He clenched his jaw and felt the shrapnel under his ribs like a small stone. He would not let go. He would not let a child be taken without a fight. Outside, the sky moved like a drum, and in the dim of the lab the men and women gathered like a small island ready to swim into the storm. The lab smelled of smoke and wet metal. Men moved like haunted animals. Marcus sat with his back to a console and stared at a dark hole in the wall. Captain Laura Reed kept her face hard, but her hands shook. Dr. Emily Carter checked the broken glass and the dead machines again and again, as if she could put them right with touch. Ethan stood near the open airlock and thought of the small hand that had touched us through the glass. He felt the shrapnel under his ribs like a small, hot pebble. He had warned them. He had carried Lyra because she was a child. Now she was gone. Now, the hunters had what they wanted. Across the sky, the hunters' ships moved like knives. The lab's long-range screen showed shapes in space. Then another set of dots answered the hunter's pulse. The return ping Dr. Carter had feared. The screen blinked, and a voice in the comm said a name that no one expected. "Admiral Collins to all units," the voice said. It was calm and flat. "Hold your fire. We are coming in." A human ship moved into view. At first it was only a shadow on the screen. It cut the dark like a blade. Then it opened its arms, and many smaller ships fell from under its belly. The shape filled the sky, and the silence under it felt like a drum ready to beat. The hunters froze in their path. Their fighters turned and screamed home. Something about the shape in the sky made their lights go off like a line of candles snuffed. The lab's men stared. For a moment no one moved. A human carrier descended like a wall. Its hull was dark and wide. On its side a flag rippled in the sensors. Earth's flag. Captain Reed's face changed then. She gave one small breath, and the tightness in her jaw dropped. "Who did that?" Marcus asked. "No one expected them to be here," Dr. Carter said. Her voice was small with wonder. "They came from the shadow lane. A strike group hidden in the dark." The carrier landed on the nearest flat field like a sleeping beast. Its ramps opened and soldiers poured out. They were not the ragged crew of the lab. They were clean and sharp. Their armor had lines like a new coin. At their head walked a woman, in a uniform that shone dark under the sun. She wore an officer's braid and an old scar on her cheek. She moved like steel and like rain. "Admiral Collins," Captain Reed said, and walked to meet her. Soon the field hummed with voices. Admiral Collins spoke to Reed, and then to a small console. Her team spread out and found the hunter's trail. They sent fast runners into the dark. Within minutes a report came back. The hunters had taken Lyra, but they had left tracks. They had used a route only hunters knew. They had a base not far from a cluster of dead moons. Reed turned to Ethan. Her voice was softer than he had heard. "You helped bring them here," she said, "but you also helped draw our attention to them." That was enough. Ethan wanted to answer. He only looked at Lyra's place in the lab, where glass had circled a small stain like a last print. He felt a grief that was not only for her, but for the cost of every choice. The Admiral tapped the screen and sent a small fleet out. "We go after them," she said. "We do it fast and quiet. We take what we must. We do not make them know fear before they see our steel. They move like a knife through water." Ethan rode in the second strike group. They flew in dark, small ships that looked like wasps. The hunters were quick, but Admiral Collins' force was quieter and smarter. When they hit where the hunters lived. The sky was full of noise. Men died on both sides. The hunters fought like beasts. They had armor that would not break with one shot. They had blades. They had hunger. Ethan and Marcus fought together on a low hill where the hunters kept a small outpost. Marcus covered Ethan, and Ethan ran up to a fallen beam and threw himself into the struggle. He saw one hunter hold Lyra by the arm. Her small body was limp and her face was pale, but alive. The hunter spoke in that dry voice and then turned to run. Ethan did not think. He charged. He broke through hunters like a man who had lived too close to death to fear it now. He hit the hunter, and the hunter dropped Lyra. She fell forward, and he caught her. Her breath was fast and broken. She looked up at Ethan and smiled with the same clear trust that had come when he first pulled her from the beam. Behind them, Admiral Collins' ships burned the sky. The hunters' lines broke. Ships that seemed like teeth retreated into the dark. The hunters who remained looked afraid for the first time. The human strike had changed the rhythm. The battle ended not in mercy, but in a cold hand that held the hunters by their neck. They took Lyra back to the carrier. Dr. Carter wrapped her in warm cloth. Lyra's mark glowed faint and then bright, and then a line of light traced from it across a small screen. The mark projected a map. It was simple lines and dots. It pointed to a place far on the edge of known space. The Admiral watched the map and then looked at Ethan. Her dark eyes saw many things. "This is not just a child," she said. "This is a key and a call. She called home and something answered. We would not have known if not for you." Ethan felt both pride and weight. They had rescued Lyra. They had struck a blow against a hunter band. Men cheered quietly. Marcus sat down hard and put his face in his hands. Captain Reed stood like someone who carried a cost. Days later, on the carrier, leaders came to speak. Dr. Carter explained the mark and the map. Admiral Collins warned of the danger the mark could bring. Politicians spoke in cold rooms. They counted risk like coins. Lyra sat on a low bench and watched Ethan with eyes that were old and small at once. She touched his hand, and the promise between them warmed like a small stone. She was safe for now, but safety had a price. A delegation from Lyra's people came through a thin portal and spoke in a voice that first sounded like music and then like words. They bowed, and then they spoke plainly. "You saved one of ours," their leader said through Dr. Carter's translator. "For that we give thanks. You now owe a favor. When we call, you must answer." Ethan felt the world tilt under the promise. He had kept a promise once. Now the galaxy had claimed another. He did not know what the favor might ask. He only knew that Earth's flag had shone in the dark and that men had fought and won and paid. He looked at Lyra and saw the small light in her chest. He thought of the beam that had cut him and of the blood that had tied them. He squeezed her hand and said, "I will be there." Outside, the stars looked larger and suddenly closer. The det hung in the air like a new star. The human fleet glowed in the dark, and the hunters had gone quiet. The galaxy had watched Earth answer a call. Now the galaxy would watch what Earth would pay.